Hello, friends, and welcome back to this podcast. I'm your host, June, the one, the only, the Mythical Madam. And if you're new here, this is our cozy corner of the universe where myths aren't just stories. They're lifelines, lessons, and sometimes gentle reminders that the world has always been a little strange. Welcome to the Mythical Madam, my little corner of the internet where we sip on a bit of curiosity and wander into the eerie, the haunting, and the beautifully strange. So if you're ready for a little chaos, a little darkness, and yes, plenty of my unsolicited thoughts along the way, get cozy and settle in wherever you are. Welcome to the Mythical Madam Podcast, where we share the myths, the mysteries, and oh yes, the mess. Each week, we'll explore legends from across the globe, stories full of gods and ghosts, heartbreak and wonder. But today's a little bit different, because we're not diving into betrayal or cosmic punishment. No, not this time. Today, we're sitting with a god who protects with laughter, who dances instead of judges, who shows up exactly as he is, loud, loving, and completely unbothered by what the other gods think. Welcome to episode 7. Let's talk about Bess, spelled B-E-S, the lion-faced guardian of joy, protector of mothers and misfits, and one of ancient Egypt's most unexpected heroes. I want you to paint this picture in your mind for a second. It's the middle of the night in ancient Egypt. The kind of still, heavy darkness that presses against your skin. Outside, jackals are howling. You can hear the Nile moving like the breath in the distance. Inside your home, made of sun-dried brick, lit with low oil lamps, someone is in labor. No doctors, no anesthesia, just midwives, incense, and the terrifying unknown. And in the corner of the room, carved in the wall or sitting on a small statue on a clay shelf, is him. He's not what you'd expect. He's short, almost childlike in height, but with the face of a lion. He's got a huge mane, thick and wild like fire, eyes that stare straight ahead, and his tongue sticking out like he just heard something ridiculous. He's not standing tall or posed in a profile like all the other Egyptian gods. He's facing you, front and center, dagger raised, 1 foot in a dance. That's Bess. And in this moment, when everything feels fragile, when new life is slipping into the world and death is hovering nearby, it's Bess you want with you. Because while those gods live in temples and heavens, Bess lives in your home, in your bedpost, in the beads of your necklaces, in the little amulet tucked under your pillow. He's the protector of what matters most. You. Bess isn't one of those high-gloss gods. He didn't glide in on a golden bark or descended from a royal lineage carved in temple stone. He wasn't born in the official myths with fanfare or even flames. Some say he came from Nubia, others from Libya. But wherever he came from, he didn't wait for permission to belong. He simply showed up, loud, joyful, and impossible to ignore, like a drumbeat at dawn, like laughter when you need it most. And here's a fascinating little detail. In the Nubian language, the word Bess actually means cat, which is fitting, isn't it? This fierce little guardian, half lion, half mischief, sinking into your home not as royalty but as a companion, watchful, protective, a little unpredictable, always watching in the shadows. And people loved him. And not just the common people loved him. The pharaohs loved him. The priests loved him. Everyone loved him. Because Bess wasn't there to rule over you. He was there to stand beside you. And isn't that kind of beautiful? In a world of gods who towered over mortals, wrapped in silk, glowing with cosmic symbolism, he didn't fit the mold, and he didn't try to. He was smaller, sure, but never small in mindset. His hair wild, his eyes watchful, his stance unshaken. He didn't descend in a blaze of light or announce himself with thunder. He just appeared, uninvited but undeniable, like someone who knew exactly where he was needed. No altar required, no offering demanded, just presence. And people didn't follow him out of fear or duty. They kept him close. Because with Bess, power didn't look like distance. It looked like protection. He wasn't worshipped because he ruled. He was loved because he stayed. Bess wasn't just a guardian of life and death. He was the protector of the in-between. During childbirth, when the veil between the worlds felt paper thin, it was Bess who stood watch, not with a grand ceremony, but with steady watchfulness, fierce, grounded, and rooted in stone. He looked after sleeping children, chased away the things that couldn't be named, and shielded households from spirits that lingered just out of sight. But what's especially remarkable is that his protection extended into the most ordinary personal spaces, like the quiet act of getting ready in the morning. You'd find Bess carved into mirrors, painted into cosmetic jars, even pressed into makeup palettes, not as decoration, but as a reminder that the act of caring for yourself, your body, your spirit, was something sacred. Because in ancient Egypt, to tend to your appearance wasn't shallow, it was survival, it was power. And Bess understood that. His image wasn't just fierce, it was familiar, a little wild, a little worn, but always near. A kind of quiet companionship that said, I'm still here and I got you. And this is what's most striking to me, because most gods in ancient Egypt, they moved in patterns, cycles of the sun, hierarchies of the heavens, rituals that unfolded in sacred, orderly steps. Bess didn't care for any of that. He didn't operate on a cosmic clock. He didn't need a priest to summon him. There were no festivals in his name marked by moon phases or Nile floods. He worked off instinct, need, urgency. You called on Bess in the moment, in the middle of pain, panic, labor, fear, joy. There was no script, no waiting period. He showed up, not when it was appropriate, but when it was necessary. In a culture that honored structure, he was chaos with purpose, divine interruption. He didn't reinforce the order of the world. He protected the people living in its cracks. That's what makes him so unforgettable, not because he was kind, but because he was immediate. We often picture gods that they have this notion that they command attention through silence, through awe. But Bess, he moved. He shook tambourines, he played harps, he danced. Not off to the side, but right in the middle of things. Rituals, ceremonies, and healing rites. He didn't just protect people by standing guard. He drove off chaos with sound, with rhythm, with movement that meant something. In ancient Egypt, music and dance weren't just casual acts. They were ritual instruments used to open sacred space, pushing out spiritual affliction and realign a person's body and soul with the greater cosmic balance, the principle the Egyptians called Ma'at. Ma'at wasn't just a word for truth or justice. It was the natural order, the pulse of the universe. When Ma'at was broken by sickness, fear, spiritual unrest, it wasn't enough to pray quietly. You had to move the energy. And that's where Bess came in. He appeared on instruments, systems, and sacred carvings, crouched mid-step, hair wild, often surrounded by dancers or musicians. Sometimes he leads them. Oftentimes he's holding the rhythm steady, like the drumbeat of order inside of the chaos. Movement magic designed to drive out darkness and bring the body, the home, the spirit back into Ma'at. Because sometimes balance doesn't return just through silence. Sometimes you have to shake it back into place. And Bess knew this, and he made room for it through sweat, music, laughter, and noise. Where other gods enforced structure with laws, Bess did it with rhythm, with joy that had teeth, with movement that said, this is sacred too. He wasn't just a guardian, he was a keeper of Ma'at, one beat at a time. It's easy to remember the gods with temples, the ones carved into stone, the ones with priests, pageantry, and the long titles etched into the walls of eternity. But what about the ones who never asked for any of that? Bess wasn't found in monuments, he was found in moments. And for a long time, Bess was everywhere. He was painted on the side of walls, etched into mirrors, and carved into bed frames and headrests like we talked about. His face grinned back at you from rings and amulets, things people wore not for show but for safety. He wasn't some distant figure locked away in a gilded temple. He was part of the heartbeat of a home. People sang his name with joy and celebration. They prayed to him, not with grand offerings, but with whispered gratitude. A touch of his image before sleep, a glance at his face before stepping into the unknown. He was printed, painted, and carved, and carried. He wasn't just remembered, he was lived with. Here's the part that's very interesting. Bess wasn't part of the original Egyptian pantheon. He didn't descend from Ra, wasn't linked to Osiris, or any of the other Egyptian gods. He didn't sit on a cosmic throne or command the heavens. His roots actually trace back to Nubia, a foreigner in the eyes of the empire, and yet he slipped through the cracks of tradition and made himself indispensable, not to the priests, not to the pharaohs, but to everyone else. He was loved without temples, worshipped without ceremony, and in a world ruled by hierarchy, Bess belonged to the people. And then the music stopped. As Egypt changed, so did its gods. Empires rose, invaders came, new names were whispered, old names were forgotten. The Greeks arrived, and then the Romans. Different religions began to spread, and those tiny little altars, the one with Bess' watchful eye, were taken down, packed away, or simply just lost. No great rebellion, no dramatic act of erasure, just a slow unraveling of memory. And here's the thing, Bess wasn't erased out of hatred. He wasn't torn down in protest. He was forgotten by silence. He lived in private spaces, which means when those spaces change, so does his legacy. The little carved lions, buried, broken, or repurposed. Those headrests and mirrors, replaced with new things. The amulets, lost in the soil or stashed away in the forgotten corners. And that's the part that hurts the most, because Bess deserved more than to fade quietly. He was the one who showed up when things got hard. Not when they were beautiful or ceremonial, but when they were messy and terrifying. During illness, fear, grief, joy. He was there when others weren't. But without monuments, his memory just scattered. And the everyday love that kept him alive faded too. But even without temples, Bess still found his way into King Tutankhamun's tomb, aka King Tut, tucked among the gold and splendor, watching over the king's journey into the afterlife. Because even then, someone believed that he still mattered. Even when history was forgetting him, someone still remembered. So what does that say about us? About the stories we choose to remember? About the things we decide are worth carving into stone? And the things we let slip quietly into the dark? How many gods have we lost because we lived in ordinary spaces? How many sacred things have we forgotten simply because they didn't wear crowns or command temples? Maybe Bess didn't fade because he wasn't important. Maybe he faded because he was too close, too woven into daily life, too ordinary to be preserved into marble. But here's the thing about stories. Even the ones that go quiet for centuries, they don't die, they just wait. And maybe that's why we're here, you and me, sitting with this story together. Because every time we speak his name, every time we remember Bess, he lives again, not in temples, textbooks, or grand castles. But that's where he always belonged, in the home and in the heart, in the soft, vulnerable places that still need protecting. So why does Bess matter now? Why are we here, sifting through the broken amulets and faded wall carvings to resurrect a god that history has mostly left behind? Because Bess was more than just a protector. He was a reminder that things that we think are ordinary are sometimes the most divine. Let's think about that for a second. Protection, joy, healing, these aren't things we find in temples anymore. They're found in people. And the ones we watch over us quietly, the ones who protect us not with force, but with presence. The ones who make us feel safe just by being near. We don't call it divine, we call it love. We call it friendship. We call it family. But maybe it's still sacred. Maybe that's why Bess mattered. Because he took the idea of the divine out of the sky and put it right into your hands. Even in death, even in royalty, Bess was still trusted. Think back to King Tut's tomb, where his image was carefully placed among the treasures of a pharaoh, as if to say, even here, even now, you're not alone. Because there are moments in life, even for kings, where you don't need thunderbolts or sky gods. You need the feeling that someone is standing guard, that someone is watching, that you're still safe. Maybe that's the part that still matters, not statues, not temples, but the feeling that someone is keeping watch. We've always needed protection like that, and the truth is, we still do. Look around you. Who is the best in your life? Not the ones with titles, not the ones with thrones or golden plaques, but the ones who hold things together quietly. The friend who checks in when you go silent, or the parent who leaves the light on until you're safely home. The stranger who steps in when no one else does. The ones who protect you not because they have to, but because they want to. They don't ask for temples, they don't demand recognition, they just show up, they're just there. That's the legacy of Bess. It's not loud, it's not ceremonial, it's steady, consistent, unyielding. And that's what I feel like we need more of. The kind of protection that doesn't make a scene but makes a difference. The kind that isn't written in storybooks but is written in memory. Because sometimes the most powerful figures in our lives are the ones who don't ask to be remembered. They just ask to keep us safe. And this is why Bess's story is so unique and it stands out. He wasn't just protector of the wealthy or the powerful. He was for everyone. In ancient Egypt, gods often had their places, right? Ra belonged to the sun, Osiris to the afterlife, Hathor to love and fertility. But these gods were largely accessed through temples, rituals, priests, places the average person could always reach. To speak to the gods, you often needed an offering, a ceremony, a gatekeeper. Bess, he kind of broke that barrier in a sense. You didn't need a temple to call on him. You didn't need a high priest's permission to whisper his name. His image was painted on the walls of the poor and the rich alike, carved into the mirrors of artisans, pressed into charms that fishermen tied to their nets. He was tucked into bed frames of newborns, etched into water jugs of farmers. Bess wasn't just the god of the home, he was the god of your home. That was his magic. He didn't ask where you came from, how much you owned, or if you had enough to give. His protection wasn't determined by wealth or status. If you called for him, he came. And in a world built on hierarchies where temples were grand and offerings were gold, Bess proved that the divine didn't have to be distant. It could be yours. And that's what made him so powerful. He wasn't tethered to the elite. He wasn't locked away behind the stone walls or bronze doors. He was accessible to anyone, anywhere. Maybe that's why he faded so quietly. Because when power shifts, when history is written, it's the gods of empires who get remembered. The ones with temples and priests, the ones whose names were inscribed into stone and law. But Bess, he was everywhere and nowhere. Carried in pockets, tied to beds, whispered at night. Divine, not because he was worshipped in palaces, but because he protected you in your own room. I wanted to leave another interesting point that I want to make right now, that there's a side of Bess that often gets overlooked. It's a role that stretched beyond doorways and bedposts, because he wasn't just a god of protection, he was the guardian of dreams. In ancient Egyptian times, dreams weren't just idle thoughts that danced through your head at night. They were messages, warnings, prophetic messages, sometimes even glimpsed into the world beyond. And just like the waking world, the realm of dreams were full of threats, spirits, nightmares, shadows that crept in during the stillness of sleep. For most Egyptians back then, sleep wasn't just rest. It was a crossing, a moment where the soul wandered, unguarded. And that's where Bess came in. His image was carved into the headrest of children, painted into the walls where people slept, etched into charms placed under their pillows. He wasn't there to watch you dream. He was there to protect you while you did rest. Because for the Egyptians back then, a nightmare wasn't just a bad dream. It was a sign, a ripple in the spiritual world that could bleed into the real one. If you woke up with fear still clinging to your bones, it meant something had gotten too close. Something had tried to reach across the veil. Bess wasn't just a figure to guard your home. He was the keeper of the threshold between the waking and the dreaming, the one who stood watch while your eyes closed, the one who made sure whatever lurked in the shadows stayed there. And maybe that's the part of this story that still matters, because even now, we think of sleep as a sanctuary, a place to rest, right? To heal, to escape. It's also a place of vulnerability, and sometimes we still reach for things to protect us while we sleep. The nightlight, the arm under the pillow, the lock on the door, the teddy bear. We may not whisper his name anymore, but that instinct, that need to feel safe in the dark, that's something we haven't outgrown. Bess still mattered not just because he guarded homes, because he protected the places we can't always see. The places where fear comes quietly and protection is a matter of faith. So maybe that's the real magic of these stories. And why I love telling them. They don't need monuments or temples, they just need to be remembered. For centuries, Bess lived in the cracks of history, not in marble or gold, but in whispers and carvings, small enough to fit in your hand. He wasn't forgotten out of hate or spite or anything like that. He just faded very quietly, slipping into the spaces between memory and myth. But right now, he's here again, because the moment we say his name, we pull him back from the edges of obscurity. We breathe life into these cracks and these stories. We light the corners of history that haven't been seen in centuries. That's the magic of storytelling. To speak a name is to bring it back to life. Power of stories like Bess's, they're not just echoes from the past. They're threads that still connect us, even when they fade, even when they slip through. They never really leave. They just wait quietly until someone is ready to retell it. And next time, we're gonna follow another story that's been waiting in the shadows. A story that soars through the night sky, bound by magic and desperation. It's a tale of wild risk and whispered promises, of reaching beyond the edge of what's possible and touching something forbidden. Some say it's just a legend, other claims it's more than that, but one thing's certain, it survived for a reason. So if you're ready to take that leap, to step into the unknown, I'll be right here with you. I'm June, and this is the Mythical Madam. Until next time, keep your eyes on the horizon, because some stories aren't just told, they're written. If you enjoyed this episode, please let me know and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. And make sure to leave your comments if you're listening on Spotify. Don't miss out on a single episode. Episodes dropping bi-weekly, so make sure to subscribe on the show on Substack at Mythical Madam and my YouTube channel. The Mythical Madam is produced and edited in partnership with Andy Lara at sunfacemedia.com. I'm incredibly grateful for the collaboration and support in bringing these stories to life. All of this and more linked in the show notes. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.